And then there is one other major change in fieldwork, and perhaps in a way the most important one. Now, as I said, when anthropology was pretty much the business of imperial powers, it was almost a definition of fieldworking anthropology that you go abroad, far away to other parts of basically your empire. So if you were in Oxford or Cambridge, you might well go to somewhere in Africa or to India or to Papua New Guinea or something like that. And if you were in Paris, well, there were parts of West Africa that were sort of logically your territory. Since then, there has been less of this sort of imperial logic, I think, in fieldwork, and we still do quite a lot of traveling. Tommaso did his first fieldwork in Rajasthan in India. I got into anthropology initially because I was interested in Africa, and I did some work certainly there as well. And I think having this sense that you can very well come from one country and work somewhere else is still very much a part of anthropology. But a major growth of the discipline has certainly been in studies which are so-called anthropology at home. Studying in some part what is perhaps not strictly speaking at home for you, but at least within your own nation state. And in some countries, of course, this has always been a strong part of the discipline. In other areas, there has been sort of more of a change. The real growth of anthropology in Africa, in African universities, Asian universities, Oceanian universities and so on. There have certainly been local scholars who are anthropologists, but primarily do anthropology at home. And this, I think, sort of changes the geography of the discipline quite importantly. Now, if you look back again at the classic field study in the sort of mid-20th century version, well, there is one radio lecture on British radio, BBC, that was published and which I like to think of as a kind of point of departure for considering this. This was Professor Evans Pritchard at Oxford, who described the way that good Oxford fieldwork was done, and he wrote about an Oxford man because at the time he didn't think of women anthropologists as particularly noticeable in the discipline, and that's also been a major change. But what he described was a situation where this Oxford man goes out to some place in the empire, stays a year or preferably two in a local community, learns the language, of course, and then comes home and then writes up, perhaps makes another return visit to this field, and then kind of launches the academic career, getting a position at a university and this sort of thing. Which is still, I think, a kind of classic notion of how fieldwork is to be done. You go out and immerse yourself in one place for a very long period and do your work in large part through participant observation, although certainly complemented by interviewing with informants and so on. And it might still look like an intellectually quite viable ideal, the kind of thing that one might strive to do, but the thing is also that it's something that fits best with the idea of a single young person without many other commitments who can just take off for a year or two and immerse himself or herself in this strange environment without any other commitments in life for that period. That then may well look rather problematic in periods after that, when perhaps you have a job, perhaps in academia, perhaps somewhere else, where you may have other organizational commitments, and where it's also quite likely that you have domestic commitments. Creating a family, raising a family, going through the entire domestic cycle of that. And some anthropologists, including Professor Evans Pritchard himself, gathered enough materials in his younger days to keep writing about it, so he published his last article about the Azande in southern Sudan, I think the same year that he died at a fairly advanced age. And some people do it that way. Some people perhaps finish up their materials pretty much with a PhD dissertation, and then they go on speaking about this fieldwork experience of theirs for the rest of their active professional life, which could be interesting enough, but is sort of a somewhat strange researcher career. I remember once talking about this with Clifford Geertz, the very well-known American anthropologist. I don't know whether he ever wrote about this, but he compared this to the academic career of historians who just sort of get better and better. They read more and more throughout life and produce perhaps their most famous works when they are getting close to retirement or after, because there is no end to their sort of data collecting and thinking about it throughout life. I think this is something that one should confront openly and explicitly. I mean, the kind of scholarly career problem that's almost built into anthropological work of the classic variety. And the thing is, of course, that a lot of people have been, I think, solving this problem in their own way, some extremely successfully, some perhaps middle successfully, but I think we need to think about the variety of models of field work, and beyond that also the varieties of anthropological work that is perhaps less directly field work based, comparative studies, other kinds of work, other kinds of writing that anthropologists may legitimately do, which is not entirely based on me and my field data. And you can look at some anthropological careers like, again, Clifford Geertz or Eric Wolf or Mary Douglas or Sidney Mintz. I don't know Italian anthropology at all well enough to be able to quote the examples from here, but I think we need to think about the varieties of kinds of research that anthropologists can be involved in, and being more explicit about it and identifying the genres and so on. Partly, again, because of this background of changes in the universities, where with the judging of disciplines and departments on basis of productivity, the idea of having a department that seems full of has-beens who stop producing or just seem rehashing their old stuff, sort of, even not only for our own intellectual health, but also for the way that our departments look in the present world, we should think about how scholars in anthropology remain productive as long as they are employed and counted.
Allora, uno dei cambiamenti più importanti nel fieldwork, diciamo, all'inizio l'idea era di andare lontano, di solito appunto in paesi all'interno del proprio impero, anche se dai primi tempi dell'antropologia non c'è più questa caratteristica imperiale, tuttavia è rimasta un po' l'idea di dover andare lontano. Uno dei cambiamenti importanti è stato quindi quello dell'antropologia fatta a casa, ovvero all'interno del proprio Stato-nazione principalmente. E in molti luoghi del resto l'antropologia a home, a casa, è stato il modo più frequente di fare antropologia, soprattutto appunto nei paesi ex colonie. Riguardo un punto di partenza per parlare di un altro problema del fieldwork può essere la serie di letture che Vasbric ha tenuto alla radio nel dopoguerra riguardo appunto proprio al problema del campo, e descriveva Vasbric qual era il percorso classico di un antropologo uomo di Oxford, e fa presente appunto U.Hannerz che ai tempi non era dato come una possibilità ci fosse una donna antropologa, era più l'uomo come il possibile antropologo. Il problema del genere è venuto dopo, e quindi quest'uomo va di solito in qualche luogo dell'impero in cui si ferma per 1 o meglio 2 anni, impara la lingua del posto, dopodiché torna a casa, magari ritorna anche un po' sul luogo lontano, sul campo, poi scrive e inizia diciamo la sua carriera accademica. Quindi il classico topos del vai via, ti immergi in una situazione e poi riporti a casa la tua impressione, i tuoi dati, la tua ricerca. E questa è ancora percepibile come idea principale di che cos'è il fieldwork, ma oggi diventa sempre più difficile fare qualcosa del genere, soprattutto se non si è dei giovani che hanno la possibilità per lunghi periodi di non pensare a nulla. Per chi invece appunto dopo un periodo iniziale ha altri problemi come anche una carriera, una famiglia, diventa molto più difficile fare un lavoro come questo. Del resto ci sono situazioni in cui appunto persone hanno basato la propria carriera su un'unica lunga raccolta di materiale. Lo stesso Vasbric ha pubblicato l'ultimo articolo sugli azzande l'anno stesso in cui è morto, quindi a distanza di 40 anni dalla sua ricerca sul campo. E sarebbe interessante analizzare come oggi differenti persone, differenti antropologi risolvono questo tipo di problemi, quindi da un lato la varietà di modalità del fieldwork, e quindi come differenti studiosi fanno differenti tipi di fieldwork, dall'altro la varietà proprio del tipo di lavoro che legittimamente si può fare, può essere chiamata antropologia, al di là del rapporto con il fieldwork. E questa cosa è utile sicuramente sia da un punto di vista proprio della definizione interna della disciplina, dei propri obiettivi, dei propri metodi, sia anche proprio per all'interno dei dipartimenti una situazione in cui sempre di più la necessità di essere produttivi, e quindi il discorso del neoliberalismo si fa sempre più presente. Avere un dipartimento in cui la rappresentazione esterna, che a un certo punto tutti se ne vanno in qualche luogo lontano, probabilmente non farebbe una buona impressione a chi deve poi dare fondi all'università.